Greetings. Today is June 21st, 2013, the day of the summer solstice. This video is being created at Stewart Mineral Springs in Mount Shasta. The purpose of this interview is to document our galactic history going back approximately 54 million years with Andrew Bartzis, a galactic historian. Andrew has the unique ability to read the Akashic records. My name is Lance White, and I'm best known for the radio show A Fireside Chat with Zany Mystic at BBS Radio. So let's meet Andrew now and talk to him. Hi, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing good today. I'm glad you were able to come to the event here.
Oh, yes.
Beautiful, beautiful place here.
Well, it's great to meet you, and I was taken with your information instantly, and so I thought maybe we could start out with your definition of a galactic historian, how you got to read the Akashic records, and we can kind of segue into what's
going on.
Yes, which is what we all want to know.
Well, a galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma. One planet in this part of the galaxy creates karma that's war-based. This planet creates drama that's music-based or soul-based. They create lines of drama. And a planet will generally have a theme. Not all karma is bad. Not all karma is good. Some of it's just in between. A galactic historian goes to each and every line of dramatic karma and lives in soul family with everyone, so they see the big picture of all of the karma that's going on in a local part of the universe. What makes it very difficult is you have to have true love with someone in that soul family in each and every time.
Mm-hmm.
So the truth about the galactic historian is to become one, you have to go to all of the worlds, live in all their incarnation and reincarnation cycles, and be soul family to each one. When our solar system was built from the ground up to clear out the karmic pollution of the universe, everyone was put here, and I had already lived the lifetimes. There were 4 people ahead of me in this world that had the opportunity to say yes. They said no. When it came to my turn, I said yes. There's 2 people beyond me that can say yes or no if it comes to their turn.
Huh.
That's the basic definition of the galactic historian. Being soul family to everyone means I've traveled a lot. I'm old.
I guess so. Now, when did you first start to gain an understanding of the Akashic records, and how does that work for you, and how has that evolved?
When I was still an innocent little kid, I was doing it then, but nowhere near at the power levels that I do now, or the ability now. When I was 9 years old, my dad took me to a baseball game at Cleveland Stadium. Bottom of the 9th inning, tied game, somebody hits a home run, the whole stadium cheers. At that point, I downloaded all the Akashic records of everyone that was there. It's 83,000 plus people. Even people miles away from the stadium. At that point, I knew I was different. I searched my mind. What was Atlantis? What was Lemuria? What was Decanara? Speaking in soul languages and not being able to communicate with this to my family, they just wouldn't understand. Where do you begin to even say that to anyone? I love my family. They're great people, and every family has a little dysfunction in it, but I knew I couldn't say anything. Just knew it. There was a 2-week period where there were guides from Hollow Earth that came there and helped me redeposit the information from my brain into my cellular memory. And your cellular memory is literally in your skeletal energy. It's not in your muscular factor. Even though we as species today use our skin to store imagery or messages, and we shouldn't. It should all be within our cellular memory of our skeletal structure.
So now we're in the process of learning about Earth's history, and apparently there's been quite a lot of shenanigans and playing with timelines and so on and so forth. Most of us are familiar with the basic story that's come through various channels and who some of the players are. But you're going to take us back starting about
52 million to 54 million. Well, we lost 2 million years of history when Earth wasn't in this universe anymore.
Okay, what happened?
It was a big prize that a galactic sentience of another universe said, I want to play in this game for a little while. And it came into our universe and said, I'm taking this. And there wasn't enough powerful entities at the time, even the dark guys here, that could stop them. And they put it in another universe for 2 million years and allowed it to seed life in another universe, because that's its original purpose, is to be a galactic seed planet, seeding whole life, DNA, wisdom to whole new galaxies. And then Earth got mad, basically gave it the middle finger, and came back over here and got back into the fold of what was going on here.
So it was able to break loose.
Correct. It is a sentience.
Right, right. Do you have a name for that galactic group?
The universe that it went to?
Right.
We'll just call it the Zalov-Ka.
Okay. Okay.
It doesn't have language, and it is intonation, Zil-La-Qua. That's the best way to describe it. It's not a free will universe.
That we have now.
Correct. We are a 100% free will universe. And free will means we can set up our realities based off of the rules that we create in it.
Okay, but our free will has been co-opted over those millions of years.
Correct.
Okay, so then who was next to interfere with the free will of the planet?
Well, Earth had drama while it was being created. Drama is natural. Drama can be, I don't like you because your technology is better than mine, my religion is better than yours. People have ego even at the higher dimensions. It just functions differently. When karma reaches the point where a sentient species can reach out several galaxies beyond their home planet, you can create karmic pollution to newer planets or younger planets. Earth was one of those that brought good pollution and bad pollution to thousands of worlds. Earth, when it was first rolled out as a seventh dimensional galactic seed planet, its purpose was to have these chakras on its planet that are called wombs, W-O-M-B, like a woman's womb. There, anyone that lived above the womb chakra, their sentience would be influenced to create DNA, wisdom, through interbreeding with other species, through scientific or spiritual creations. Thus, Lemuria and Atlantis, where the societies returned to Earth's original purpose while it was in a light part of space where sentience was expanded, knowing full well that they would come into the denser and denser part, and the breeding of souls that were coming in was outweighing them, because the invasion we have is a spiritual invasion. It's always been that way. The dark forces have always known, technologically wise, they can't win. But they figured out a way to manifest energy bodies and force incarnate souls into our world that aren't soul family with us, and to the point they created enough breeding population to make an anchor population for more and more to come in at a faster rate than the good.
Okay. Does some of that include using astral shells that have not crossed over?
Correct.
Okay.
And the walk-in rules and all that.
So it's basically reanimating something that has been that's probably has a negative aspect to it to begin with. So that takes us to what, about?
We'll go 51 million years.
Okay.
51 million years, Earth had already been ripped out of its home galaxy. The original dark forces that invaded from the war galaxy came here and saw Earth and said, that's the prize of the prize of the prize. All these other little planets were nothing to them. So they captured Earth through a spiritual invasion, outbred the people there by creating more corrupted souls that caused political devastation, land devastation, and dramatic wars with other places, until finally there was a core group of dark beings who took over the chakra system and the unity consciousness drive of Earth, and then teleported it against its will to another galaxy. That first teleportation greatly injured Earth. It was near dead. And Earth gave out a cry to the universe and beyond, I need help. Massive migrations from the 7 universes ascended on Earth and overbred the dark forces there, kicking them off, but they still had the first interlinking of the anchor societies there. When Earth began to go through its healing process, that would essentially be the dinosaur age.
Okay.
But sentience had been removed from the surface, but brought into an ethereal realm. so that the surface, the surface that we live on, this is the graduating timeline. If you're here to become a higher dimensional soul, to interfunction with Earth, or to go out and explore space with your consciousness, you have to be on the graduating timeline. Earth has 3 timelines: above, below, center.
Okay.
Center is the graduating timeline.
Okay.
Okay? So at this point, Earth kicked off its first. They reinforced the energies of Earth. And they said, we know the spiritual invasion's coming, so this begins the first process of creating pyramids. The first process of creating pyramids was to amplify the consciousness of Earth after the damaging effect of being ripped out of its original galaxy. So the pyramids were placed on the chakra points, placed on the crustal points, enforced the ability for the local sentients to create local realities, and made a grid that was reinforced so that any entity coming in had to go through a filter to determine if it can actually make spiritual contracts with Earth sentients to have sentient kind on the graduating timeline. At that point, the dark guys had spread to a few thousand other worlds and began dominating and controlling and mastering the system of domination control on very low-end species. That's where they discovered if they're ever going to take Earth, they knew that in the galactic rotation, Earth would go through very light to very dark, to very dense spots. And in that dense spots is the place that they could mass spiritually invade that place and then lower the consciousness level of the surface people by influencing the DNA, influencing the soul families, influencing the soul contracts, and literally getting us at every stage of the game and removing how we would naturally live with our planet.
So, in other words, we're disconnected from our ability to communicate and commune and source.
Correct.
So, now, when did that begin? So this goes back to the pyramids as well, right?
Well, there's 9 layers of pyramids. Earth has been moved 12 times.
Wow.
Captured 12 times.
Wow.
There are 9 layers of fortifications on the astral world. There's no other planet in the universe, or 3 other universes, that's been fortified that much.
Wow.
So, you're in a situation where the dark guys capture it, fortify it. The light guys recapture it, fortify it. So on and so forth, until finally the fortification grid and the quarantine of the good guys out there is literally the hindrance of what we have, plus the multidimensional beings that are within us, manipulating drama and manipulating spiritual contracts so that when unity consciousness comes, they can program their propaganda of thousands of years will come to fruition. We're a race with amnesia, and we're a race held hostage, in a perfect position for entities that want to take the more powerful people and take them somewhere else by their own belief.
Wow. So we're entering another one of those periods of time, like a harvest period, so to speak, or ascension period.
We're ascension period. We're going out of a very dense part and going into a very light part. There's 66 planets in our solar system. The vast majority of them are in the light part of space, and Earth and Mars are stuck in the dense part, anchored by the sleeping people that haven't awoken to their consciousness. They're the ones anchoring us there now.
And there are bases on Mars and
all over.
Right, everywhere.
I call this world and this solar system the Galactic Antiques Roadshow, because the vast majority of species that got lured into their drama, we're here to salvage the thousands or millions of ships that are littering our solar system from the numerous wars over and over and over again.
Wow. Well, no. So, how do we navigate this time? How do we?
Let's look at the 50 million year concept.
Okay.
When time wars began, that's the tricky thing. 480,000 years ago is when the actual time wars began. But time, we're on a planet with 3 timelines. They're only going after the graduating timeline in the beginning.
Okay.
So the first set of multidimensional beings that had incarnated here became 40% of our breeding population. 15 beings equaled 40% of humanity. At that point, it was nearly 70 billion people on this world. That's a lot of them.
Wow.
That's how they got soul family status with everyone. They
Wow.
then brought in dimensional technology that was meant for vessels only and installed it on Earth so that they could take one continent out of a timeline and put it back into a deep, distant timeline, one by one by one by one by one, so they can get to the point to create what's called the first species of Earth. There are 72 first species of Earth because every time Earth was recaptured, they tried to re-erase the timelines. But once you have sentience that's born, you can't erase the sentience, and Earth has to adopt that as a first species.
Huh.
So the Time Wars are all about creating the first sentience. Well, we have 72 first species now.
Wow.
And as many as 6,000 different refugee species who've come to live on our world because their worlds are being decimated or destroyed.
Wow.
And Earth has always been this point where souls migrate to it, they migrate away. I call it like, the ducks in the winter, you got, the massive flowing flows of ducks going that way. But Earth is this migration center because it has a graduation timeline that's very impressive. You have 100% free will here, and you come in with a blank mind. It's very important. There are other worlds that you remember all of your past lives.
Mm.
You speak by the time you're 4 months old.
Hmm.
We go through this growing process. That's
And-
cherished in other worlds.
Huh. Well, it seems like it could also be a disability if you're being programmed and manipulated
Taken over, right.
and taken over, and then there's that element of soul contracts, which you mentioned, that
Mhm.
where as the soul comes in, it can be bounced, which is one way of shoving us off of our path.
Mhm.
And another one is adding fine print or adding
Exactly.
So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it started in Lemuria. Lemuria was a really high consciousness. Earth was its true seventh dimensional status. It was creating DNA, and it was inviting other species to come live here for a while so that they could live on above these womb chakras and create DNA and then take it to a new world in unity to this new world. They would never force bring DNA to a new world.
Mm.
Earth is also capable of psychically transporting the DNA wisdom that's created in these womb chakras to a blank Akashic record planet that's about to invite its first group of souls to come and live on it. That's its purpose. During Lemurian times, there were air cities all over, there were ground cities, and there were as many as 5,000 different species that came here to work with Earth to create DNA to spread. Well, the dark guys had gotten their little fingers in there and started creating their drama within inside, and as the society began to build to its peak, factions formed in it. You had spiritual factions, you had scientific factions, you had no technology factions, high technology factions, and these factions began the separation, and the separation is what took Earth from a seventh dimensional status to a sixth dimensional. So it literally lost a whole quotient of its exponential energy. The separation caused a mass migration away. Earth was left undefended. It was captured. That's the first fall of Lemuria.
Okay.
The multidimensional beings who were here orchestrated that capture, okay, because they had gotten in. The new beings that came to take over Earth reanimated Lemuria with the leftover refugee population here, instilled domination and control, and began an incarnation pattern to bring in more of the kinds that they wanted from the other worlds that were dominated and controlled. At this point, the good guys of the rest of the universe said, we have to do something about this. But there was a huge debate among the ascended masters, the philosophers. There's a galactic sentience that created war in another galaxy, and that galactic sentience allowed it to come here. This was known as the first mistake of the Prime Creator. The galaxy we were in wasn't ready for war. It wasn't set up for war, but it's here now. So they took way too long to figure out a result for it. At that point, many species began taking up war to defend themselves. It was just natural. That creates the first lines of drama. Mars. Mars is one of those planets that's high technology, very low spirituality when it was first in existence. It was a commerce center, but it turned commerce into military-industrial complex. When Mars and Earth began their first lines of drama, Earth needed technology to support the defense and fortification process. That's how Mars and Earth got interlinked before they got brought into this solar system. Venus was a high philosophical society with thousands of individual realities where they invited species to come and share philosophy, share sentience. Venus as a planet has got the twin flame of the feminine energy to it for a reason, so it can support all of that consciousness of other worlds there. Earth itself, during these timeline wars, when we look at the section at 480,000 to 420,000 years ago, is when all the big players of the 2,300 primary soul families, 2,200 primary soul families and 2,300 different species. So there's just a little difference. Soul families breed and create species, and then there's the actual number of species. All of them were in competition to make Earth theirs. And all of them had time travel technology. All of them had interdimensional vessels.
Wow.
All of them had explored the universe. And they were all in competition to get to make that first species.
Wow.
So that's what puts us in the setup of the time wars. We look at Earth as, I look at Earth before the timelines were unified, as just this giant ball of mess.
Yeah.
And this giant ball of mess, you could never know what was really being done. One person would do something that would counteract this. Somebody would do something to counteract this. Somebody would create 5,000 timelines and only do one important thing on one timeline, and it would take you forever to figure it out. So that's how that all works. Lemuria first fell, recaptured. Lemuria's rise again. The light's in that. As the light's in it, it tries to unravel all these timelines. Earth is stuck with new first species on it. Those species need to graduate and migrate off this world. Constant graduation, migration, remigration back here. A lot of the dark worlds were migrating here now. So we get to the second fall of Lemuria. At this point, Lemuria understands the war's loss. They get it. They dimensionally understand it. But they also know that deep in the future, they're going to come to a point where it's going to go from extremely dense, extremely open to extremely dense, to extremely open to extremely dense. So they began leapfrogging in time with a third to three-quarters of their population and bringing their air cities to the future to free the future people from the past. That's where they began defending their world on the central graduation timeline. The above timelines is where the high-dimensional entities can come in and act as guides or ascended masters. The lower timeline is where younger spirits or animal spirits can live on Earth and then graduate into having human bodies. They're not worried about the above and below. They're worried about the graduation timeline. That's where the majority of these timeline wars are. So you have any questions about that?
Have there been graduations over the...
There hasn't been a graduating class in 410,000 years.
So the normal process would be for there to be continual evolution and graduation.
Correct.
So that's an organic process that would ordinarily occur.
Natural.
Right. And so all of these time wars and the dark have corrupted the incarnation process, and so what we have is people are not necessarily ascending and leaving.
They're stuck in a reincarnation.
Reincarnating over and over, and how they just get it to the astral plane, and they basically have a breather, and then they're sent right back. Are there pools of souls as well where they're genericized and then just like divvied off, and then basically programmed for whatever?
And there are whole migrations of souls that aren't allowed to incarnate here and are stuck in our astral world, and literally can't go back until they've had a lifetime here.
Ooh.
So our astral worlds are overflowing with all these things that are just stuck.
Yeah. Does that relate in any way to the demonic forces?
Yeah, because so many of those entities up there get impatient.
Mad.
Impatient, mad.
Yeah.
And some of them are dark entities that are, they've missed their cue too. They wanted to come in and get in the game, and they wanted to kick out the 15 beings, but they can't. They're stuck.
Wow.
It's their game.
Wow. Okay, we're back. This is part 2. This is Lance White with Andrew Bartzis.
How you doing?
And we just left off talking about the Lemurian air cities leapfrogging into the future to make corrections. So maybe we can pick up where we left off.
Okay. Lemurian air cities are a local reality that literally is in the air. But in between the cells of every atom is an infinite amount of space. So an air city can be out of reality in between the cells of the Earth and still be an air city out of phase of reality. So when they began to create dimensional drives that created time travel effects, the air city would go into Earth and then time travel that piece of rock and then come back into the air so that they can influence the timeline on a soul family level and on a DNA level. The people in the air city were looking for versions of themselves to correct. Some of them may have gotten darkness instilled into them. They would do healings on different people. They would, at times, literally create an invasion force because at the time the dark would have had the planet. Leapfrogging through time, making corrections in a system where you have 5,000 other species creating time travel effects, it isn't easy. So you need a lot of cities to continually counter this. Where we are right now, 2011 to 2014, every single bit of the time warp is about right now. It's about propaganda coming out. Propaganda that's thousands of years old, hundreds of years old, millions of years old. This propaganda influences the awakening, which is the end of the process where we must have graduation timeline. Absolutely, it's the Prime Creator's will. So, what is a Lemurian air city? A group of people come together, unmanifest physical bodies, and with that energy create a very dreamlike reality. And that dreamlike reality takes form in the upper atmosphere where the Aurora Borealis is. The Aurora Borealis is the Earth's dreamtime sentience, and it's where the sun brings energy to it so that that system of energy has reality behind it. The city itself has its own version of a unity conscious drive where it can go to any part of the galaxy or any part of the universe as long as they can view or remote experience those other places. After Lemuria went through its first fall and went to its raise again, we go from, we'll call it 30 million years, simply because they had to leapfrog backwards and they had to leapfrog forward. Then they had to figure out each time Earth was teleported, the old timeline wars ended because the XY axis of where the planet was could no longer be used as a function for creating a timeline.
Right.
But the sentience that was part of the old timeline was still on the Earth, and Earth adopted those as new first species. Those new first species became part of the Lemurian society and left. When they left, they migrated away and became part of the polluted reality that was out there with drama and got forced back here. This is this endless come and go from Earth. Lemuria's second raise, where it fell and it raised, as the air cities figured out this timeline between here, this time stream between here and here, in this light part of vibratory space, they could try to push out as many of the negative incarnating souls that were being forced at us from as many as 6,000 or 7,000 other planets that were under domination and control.
Wow. Wow. That's a big job. That's a big job. And how successful have they been at it?
Well, we're here now.
Right.
We're here now.
Well, yes. Well, so the really exciting part to me is that all of this has to be wrapped up between 2011 and 2014.
Correct.
So we are in the final.
You have to have graduating students. You have to have graduators.
And what happens to the people who are not, quote, ready? Is that even an option?
Earth can bilocate and create multiple versions of itself and allow the separation of densities of people that are ready or not.
So that's where you have this concept of different timelines for people who are totally asleep, people who do not want to awaken, who would rather just continue on like this and have an experience of light and dark. So that is a possibility of fracturing.
It's through dream time, though.
Oh.
Say, we are a unity dreamtime society. That our world is set up. We have a global dream time.
Okay.
All of our people have a global dream center. We live in sacred geometry cities that prevent us from going into the global dream time.
Okay.
The event is all about us for a brief second experiencing unified global dream time.
Okay.
And the more and more we get exposed to it, the more and more the awake people begin to experience synchronicity, deja vu, shared dreams. And then the next layer up of awake people begin to interact with the two and teach, like, you have a kid that has a shared dream with a mother or a father or something to that effect, it spreads. And there's no way the system can stop people sharing that way.
One-on-one.
One-on-one.
Right, right. Even though there is highly developed technology to observe, monitor, there's mind control, and
All
so
that.
on and so forth. Now, you mentioned the event. There was a television show that came on and was aired briefly called The Event, about everybody collapsing and unconscious, and they accessed their future lives, and I don't remember the whole story, but it seems like it was a foreshadowing. And doesn't the dark use the Hollywood film industry to see
Soft disclosure.
Yeah, soft disclosure, yeah. So they can say, well, we told them what was coming.
Well, soft disclosure exists for many reasons. At times, it's just a really creative person coming up with an incredible storyline.
Right.
And at other times, they're influenced by energy beings that say, do this because it needs it.
Right.
Or
right.
you have other people creating things to create disunity and propaganda. We've talked about Nibiru and Planet X. It was a real situation with a real planet. It's been moved dozens and dozens of times. We, as a species, every time they re-air the series, bring it back. They've had to install technology on it that literally keeps it out of phase, so our fear consciousness doesn't remanifest it.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow, interesting.
And why Nibiru? Because in the past, the main domination and control beings had parts of themselves all throughout the timeline that could communicate to the central hive location because it's all the same being.
Okay.
So 2011 to 2014, there's over 17 million different things that are of these 15 beings. There's 17 million of them now.
Wow. Now, how does that all get resolved? And let's hear more about the event and how that.
Okay.
Have you seen that?
I just described, I'll use this one I used before. You have children sitting at a breakfast table before they have their first period in class. Every school's got that. I had a dream that said this, 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 and the kid next, oh my God, I had the same dream. The same kid and the kid over there. That begins the spread worldwide, where kids have technology to share. The adults will experience it differently. They'll experience, the sleep adults will experience deja vu. Let's say you have two people walking the street and one goes, oh my God, deja vu, and at the exact same time the other guy goes, oh my God, deja vu. You have two people going deja vu at the same time pointing at each other. Something you simply cannot deny, period. Mm-hmm. Just your reality is challenged at that moment. And that's the first part of the event. That gives us the warning that more dream time is coming.
Okay, so that is all of so for those who are more awake, we will be warned. We will see
that among our people that are asleep.
Right, and then we will be able to interpret that correctly as part of the event that's occurring. Correct. Because we're clued in on what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
And
we're all multidimensional beings experiencing multiple realities. We may not know all about it, but we know enough to go, this is disunity reality, not unity reality.
Exactly, and it's been disunity reality for thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years.
Correct. Due
to the dark and the Time Wars and the rest of it. And the Archons, which we talked about a little bit. We also, I wanted to get the mythology of the Anunnaki straightened out.
Okay.
Because according to Sitchin and his work, the Anunnaki came here several 100,000 to 400,000 years ago. And that was when we were altered genetically and used as a slave race. Now, how much of that is accurate?
Stitchin's first 3 books are very accurate, though his timelines are off.
Okay.
Stitchin's work were co-opted, and the reason why, when Stitchin wrote his books, he had a multidimensional being helping him translate the texts. He was a highly spiritual person that had a purpose to come in here. His first 3 books, up to The Wars of Gods and Men, are extremely accurate.
Huh.
Time's a little off because Earth has changed time streams so many times. You can't be accurate anymore in those times.
Right.
The Anunnaki were lured here. Their planet, Nibiru, whatever you want to call it, is what's called a free-roaming galactic entity planet.
Okay.
They have a drive inside them that doesn't need a solar system to support it.
Okay.
So they have a different version of a planetary drive. We have a unity consciousness drive.
Okay.
They have a dimensional drive. So the consciousness just needs a leadership society to function psychically with the crystalline technology of the dimensional drive so they can go anywhere they want.
Mm.
And when they go anywhere they want, they can do whatever it is that's within their free will to do.
Mm.
There was a multidimensional being, currently the one that's in charge of all of the Arab countries.
Okay.
Its pieces, parts are all the heads of the Arab families, the so on and so forth, the decision-making people, and the one layer below the decision-making people, and then their banking families. So that's one being. He's
Okay.
the one that lured them from where they were by creating carrot and stick. So they came to a world and saw leftover technology in a destroyed world. They followed to the next world, to the next world, to the next world, until finally they came to our solar system where there was nobody defending it. Completely empty.
Huh.
All of the light and dark forces had petered themselves out and literally couldn't fight anymore. They were done.
Wow.
Earth was
Wow.
abandoned.
Yeah.
Literally abandoned, except for what was left of us before the rise of Atlantis.
Okay.
Lemuria had fallen, multiple timeline wars, species die out, species leave, come back, and all of a sudden it's barren. The Anunnaki come in and go, where's all this technology? And a bunch of, primitive looking people with high spiritual technology. And they go, scratch their head. And that's when they realized that's us. They're DNA related to us.
Huh.
Okay, the being that lured them here lured them to trap them into this society. To get into Earth's solar system, you need to use the stargates of the sun
Mm-hmm.
to get in here. You have to have spiritual relations or DNA relations to get into a solar system. That's essentially how all of them work. The Anunnaki, as a free-roaming galactic planet, came into our solar system, and they never knew they had DNA relations to us, but the being that was luring them did.
Huh.
Trapped them in the incarnation cycle and stripped them of their most powerful psychics and forced them into a reincarnation cycle. And then the second layer, the second most powerful layer, became the new DNA inputs for the skin suit technology that we have here, because they needed the Anunnaki technology, the Anunnaki DNA, and the soul codes, because the Anunnaki had traveled all over the universe with their planet that can go anywhere.
Oh, wow.
Well, the main control beings have been trying to collect soul codes.
Mhm.
Soul codes determine your DNA and soul relations to a solar system. It determines where you can go. If you're a person that has only lived on 10 planets, you can only go to those 10 planets on a soul level. If you want to go to more, you have to incarnate into all of them. So what these beings were doing were drawing people here that had soul codes from all over.
Mm.
So they needed the Anunnaki because they had a piece to the puzzle that would open up this section of the universe, this section of the universe,
Wow.
this section of the universe, so on and so forth. They got pulled in here. Now Stitchin was pretty much right about mining Earth, but it wasn't about the materials. It was literally that the energy that was in the materials needed to go somewhere else, so that the souls that were Earth-based souls who had migrated away would sense the energy of the gold somewhere else and then be lured back into the machine.
Mm.
That's these control. That's how they're playing the system here.
Mm.
The Anunnaki still have free will,
Mm.
but truly didn't understand the scale of the game they got brought into.
Mm. Wow. So in a sense, they were there, even though there are no victims. They were in a sense tricked victims, just like the rest of us. So now the Anunnaki would they be reptilian in nature, draconian, or?
That's the thing. They already had enough skin suit technology that they're a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Not everything,
Okay.
but they had enough.
Okay.
I mean, they looked similar to humans,
Okay.
but there were several breeds of them that chose different DNA patterns, even though they were the same species. They could do anything they wanted to their DNA.
And was it the Anunnaki or these original 15 beings that developed the genetics that could present as a light being? In other words, they've taken the best of the genetics of all the races and created a false light matrix.
Correct. False light matrix essentially began by bringing the Anunnaki here.
Okay.
Okay. False light beings, false light technology was literally created by the Anunnaki and then spread to the rest of the planets of domination and control.
Wow.
Remember I said there's womb chakras?
Mm-hmm.
That if you live on that surface, the planet interacts with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you bring a Anunnaki DNA master and a Anunnaki weapons master and you put them there next to a pyramid that raises their consciousness, what are they going to create? Mass weapons of war,
Right.
mass consciousness, technological DNA devices that can be spread to an industrial system of domination and control planets.
Wow. So, in a sense, Earth has become like a breeding ground for domination and control of the rest of the galaxy.
Because of the chakras, the womb chakras here. We have 200.
Okay.
And that is unique and beyond unique. There are other planets out there that have womb chakras, but they all have 3 or 4.
Wow.
Okay, we have 200.
Wow. Wow. And now what about our own chakras? There's a whole controversy about us having 7 chakras, 12 chakras, and then George Kavaslis brought up the idea that the chakras were installed as ways of gaining access to us from the dark side.
It is right, and it is also wrong.
Okay.
We have so many first species of Earth. Where do you start?
Right,
Okay.
right.
It is right for 1, 2, 3, but 17 to 34 have 185 chakras.
Wow.
19, no, so on and so
Right,
forth. We
okay.
have so many first species.
Okay.
The story is that big.
Wow.
So you give all the credit to George for pointing it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now the next phase, all right, you. Okay?
Yeah.
And if there's one first species they wanted to dominate the most, it's because they wanted to breed that species to mass population. And if they did, they needed to control those chakra systems and install domination and control at the chakra level.
Right, and that's done through the incarnation process,
Correct.
right? So what else has been distorted about the incarnation process? And
A lot.
a lot. I mean, basically, nobody's graduated for over 400 some thousand
Yep.
years. Okay, so are there individuals? Because it seems to me that there are individuals or beings that look like humans that are not even close to being human, may not even be ensouled. That is, they don't have a soul or is it possible for that?
Biomechanical suits is what you're talking about?
I suppose.
Well,
Clones.
they're
and
clones,
robotics.
but here's the thing. When you create a clone of a person, you actually have a spark of that person in there. We're multidimensional beings.
Right.
When you create a clone, there's a spark of them in there.
Right.
When I function, they have parts in all different parts of dimensions interfunctioning so that I can be in this zone and doing this. When you create a clone of a person, you have essentially created a spark that has a very similar spiritual contractual pattern to it.
All right.
But it's
right.
against the entity's sovereign free will when you just collect its DNA and make a clone of it.
Okay.
So as soon as you create a clone against something sovereign free will, that entity is in domination and control and has very little of its own sovereignty. So a sentience can come in and out of it at any point. The vast majority of worlds out there, they have commerce where beings genetically build a suit for a consciousness to broadcast from one planet to another, and then they go into that suit, live there for a while, and then leave that suit, and that suit goes into cold storage for them.
Wow.
Or they unmanifest a body, travel energetically to the planet, and manifest a body somewhere else.
Huh. Well, now we were originally, as we were designed to
Do exactly that.
to do that, and to time travel and bilocate and move it between dimensions and
Right.
so on and so forth. So that probably those skills have not existed for hundreds of thousands of years due to the fragmentation and the control system that's set up.
Mhm.
So now, how is this all going to get resolved? How are some of the ways that this can be resolved with all these different versions? At some point, doesn't all that have to be unified?
Through dream time.
Through Dreamtime, okay.
It always comes back to Dreamtime. The technology of the skin suit was created in Dreamtime by unity consciousness.
Huh. Interesting.
And then you have beings that are hijacking the astral world and creating fake Dreamtimes in sacred geometry cities.
Right, right. And then these are all, most major cities are sacred geometry cities, aren't they?
Absolutely every one of them.
Every one of them, yeah. So
The road systems are part of the sacred geometry.
the names.
The names, the light posts, the electrical wires, the cable wires. Guess
Right.
what? It's all integrated into that sacred geometry.
Right. So basically, humans don't have much of a chance to awaken at all unless...
Well, they do. It's about claiming your sovereign free will. You know, before when we were outside, we were talking about, the light worker industry.
Oh,
you know
right,
what?
right.
There's some really powerful light workers out there, and I have a little something to say to them. We can't be cheerleaders anymore. We have to be proactive. We have to get out there and march. We have to begin to use our natural presence to create sparks of a march, in a unity march. One guy may not like his guy, one guy may not like this other woman's work, but we still, in unity, have to have enough forgiveness to come together, and it's part of the resistance of free earth.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so up for that. And that means putting aside any perceived differences, and that brings up the ego.
Absolutely.
That, so many New Age people are, in love with their own creations.
We're lost in light, love, and bliss.
Right.
And are ignorant, blissfully ignorant of reality.
Yeah, right. And so we've lost our edge and our anger.
Yep.
And we need that fuel. We need to become angry. We
Yes.
need to see the truth. And so it's important when people are pointing out that what's really happening, that light workers not say, well, you're just going down a conspiracy path. That we have to be able to see what we're talking about here and understand it in deeper levels, and so that we understand how we can come together in unity consciousness.
Correct.
Because that is the key, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because
Unity consciousness doesn't have disagreeers in it.
Right, right.
Okay? Unity
Right.
consciousness doesn't have a group of cheerleaders.
Right, right.
It has everybody, in the metaphorical term, with a sign that has a pitchfork on one, another sign that has a torch on the other.
Right.
I'm not saying create violence. I'm saying
Right.
the signs speak all the metaphorical language you need. One sign's a pitchfork, one sign's a torch. You have 10,000 people in the streets of America doing that. They know the mob is back. The mob has always been they've been defeated by.
Now, how do we know what to do with our information when we know that the control system is set up to recognize when somebody gets too much light or they're getting too close? It's like grass growing. They can see that there's
Something growing quick.
Yeah, and they just cut it down.
Yep.
Isn't that how it works?
It comes to claiming their sovereign free will and using it and respecting it at every level. I came up with some spiritual removal contract documents for banking, for government, and for media.
Oh, good.
And I'll be putting another one out, how to reaffirm your spiritual contracts to Earth sentience, separate of a system of domination and control. And I encourage people that have read those, add your own to it.
Mhm.
It is a framework.
Yeah.
And that framework is to use the words to empower yourself so that you understand using your sovereign free will is how you separate yourself from the rotten soul family that has been force incarnated with us.
Right, right, right. And do you have a website for that?
Yep, andrewbartzis.com.
Perfect, perfect. So 2011 to 2014 is that we're in this time frame now.
Correct.
What happens? So there will be people that may not even be aware of what's going on. The 2015 will come, 16, 17, and 18.
They will be in dream time, though.
In dream time. All
And
right.
when they're ready to come out, it'll only be like a few minutes or seconds past.
Right, because it will actually be that.
They're suspended and held into dream time until ready.
Right, right.
But Earth will be breaking into local realities again.
Oh, good.
When the armies began to march for Rome, for China, for Mongolia, they were conquering each local reality.
Mm.
And as they conquered all of them, they made roads to all of them and linked them to sacred geometry cities.
Mhm.
They took away the unity consciousness and made disunity consciousness world.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were all centralized location to the networks of roads in dominating cities.
And that's also connected to the ley lines, right?
Correct.
So
It was to overwrite the ley lines.
overwrite
That's
them,
to
yes. They
overwrite
have been
them.
overwritten. So, of all these people that are doing ley line work, are they doing anything positive? I mean, are they actually...
They are doing very
Okay,
positive
okay.
work. The energy of Earth has gone from 7th dimensional to 6th dimensional, 5th to 4th to where we are now, low 3rd.
Yes.
Because if we have any power, our weed grows really fast and they got to chop it down quick.
Right.
So, grid work, absolutely important.
Okay.
If we had people out there that were in some type of unity to do grid work with 5,000 people at a time, and 1,000 target one ley line, another 1,000 target another, based off of a calendar system, you can change the way the ley lines create energy for all of our brothers and sisters of this world. The ley lines create the energy pattern for consciousness to expand.
Okay.
It's also the XY axis for astral projection. We've had thousands of societies and civilizations that all they did was watch those stars. And the stars that they watched aren't the same stars we watch today.
Right.
Because reality is perceived through your culture. We're a media-driven culture now. They own our oral traditions.
Right.
Our oral historians were taken away. We still have some now that are out there trying to promote it, but the people that are born into the TV generation, the media generation, that's their oral history.
Right.
And it's not your mother and father as much anymore.
Right.
That's where it has to change. People like me coming out and doing the oral recording of the Akashic record.
Right.
Not in a trance. You can communicate and talk to me. I'm a real person.
Right. And you can get the facts.
I'm not channeling. I'm not anything like that. I'm simply in the Akashic record in a sacred neutral perspective. If I see something that's evil and dark in the Akashic record, it doesn't hurt me because it's just information.
Right.
If I allow myself to go in polarity and to be affected by it, I can't read the Akashic record anymore.
Right.
It
That
must
makes
be
sense.
a neutral recollection, recalling of it.
Yeah. And then that brings up the idea of us working very diligently on our judgments.
Yes.
Because once we move into judgment, we moved into polarity
Correct.
consciousness, and we're then in, in duality. So it's not that ego is bad. It's just that
It's a survival tool.
right. And we are coming from survival because it's being thrown at us left, right, and center, and every which way,
Mhm.
including in our dream time.
Yep.
So, well, it looks like we're about ready to take another break, and we will return with Andrew Bartzis, and we will be talking more about this stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay. On part 3, and this is Lance White with Andrew Bartzis.
Yes.
And we are going through the galactic history, and we left off at a point where we were talking about the event and Lemuria.
Mhm. Let's talk a little more about Lemuria. I was describing Air City's leapfrogging through time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, leapfrogging through time means you're trying to fan out and sand down the bumpy parts of the timeline where other species forcefully get here and create timeline wars. So their goal was to stop that. Well, it got to a point where they were able to stop some of it. Enough of it for them to go back in time and to... When Lemuria was before its first fall, there were over 170 billion people living on this planet.
Wow.
It was a really big planet.
Yeah.
They began to ferry through the timeline those people so they wouldn't have to be stuck in this war part.
Mm-hmm.
So they could clear out that other timeline, especially when they moved the planets. So they started ferrying their people to the new timeline. Lemuria's second raise went to about 85 billion people on the planet.
Mm.
But that 85 billion people weren't first species people.
Mm.
Many of them were refugee planets people that Earth adopted as brothers and sisters, or daughters and sons. Their planets were under domination and control, and the beings that were out traveling and couldn't come home had to have somewhere to go, had to have a sacred feminine planet to stay connected to a tree of life. If you're a free roaming galactic planet and your planet sentient loses lots of its vibration and you use technology to supplement breeding, You get into the cloning factor where many of these species out there can no longer have children, don't know how to be pregnant, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They came here, Earth adopted them, and the population raised and raised, and then the consciousness of the planet raised, the consciousness of our solar system raised, the consciousness of our sun raised, and the total sine wave of consciousness that represents our solar system spiraling around the galactic central sun means we can go a little faster. Time gets redefined at this point. It isn't anywhere like we see now. So when we see people in books saying 300,000 BC it was this, 200,000 BC, it isn't that, because time doesn't work like that in the past. We're basing it off of our time. Time here right now is just a social agreement.
Yeah.
How many calendars do we have in this world? How many time dates do we have? Universal time, Greenwich Mean Time, Daylight Savings Time. Time is social. It's not a universal concept anymore. So when we try to gradiate backwards what time is, it begins to fail because our written history has been manipulated by time travel, by people that knew what was happening in 2011 and read the books that led up to it.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that wrote them also.
Right. Now, does that include the sacred texts as well? Like
Many of them have been hijacked, but to have religion, you have to have good in it.
Right.
Absolutely have to.
Right.
Otherwise, the falseness won't create. Now, when Lemuria rose its second time, there was a heavy spiritual influence that created the first semblance of religions, where sects of people created this religion, sects created this religion, this religion. Some was around technology, some was around unity consciousness travel, some was around no technology and you lived in the dirt, but you had all of the DNA technology in your body to go anywhere you wanted. And every time you came back to Earth, it was to be on her soil with bare feet, barely any clothes, making your own home out of what the Earth provided to you, creating your oral traditions so when souls would come together in the dream world and then in the physical world, they can procreate new soul families here. This is what Lemuria was about at this raise. They were trying to get back into the concept that Earth is a seed planet. It's meant to bring DNA wisdom to new planets or young planets so that they can have souls that go there, have the technology that go there, so that the commerce of consciousness expands throughout the universe because our universe is ever expanding. So Lemuria had the technological issue, and it's the same issue that with Atlantis. Technology comes to a point where the generation that's leaving and the generation that's coming in don't have the same point of view.
Oh, right.
Okay, so one technology that is absolute unity bliss type can be turned into a weapon that can be used somewhere else in a different type of reality. Lemuria had very little choice but to end some of the dramatic timeline, the dramatic karmic lines out there, which was to create a military force and go out and defeat and begin to recapture the worlds under domination and control. At this point, there are as many as 200,000 worlds that were in domination and control. It had spread that quick. Well, 200,000 means that they can put a lot of souls in spiritual invasion. You have to stop that at the source. At this point, cities were created out of crystal that were built on heavy-duty earth chakra points that were as many as 300,000 of the most powerful psychics in the world would come and sit in this crystalline city, remote view, remote experience, and remote attack another planet's sentience or its species on the surface and kill everyone there.
Wow.
Because that was the only way to stop that invasion.
Wow.
Or a meeting point, a rendezvous point of 10,000 vessels coming to invade here. They'd wait for them to assemble and then psychically attack everyone inside.
Wow. Now, were some of those people us, in a sense?
In a sense, yes.
In a sense.
Because the migration patterns are coming in and out. Lemuria's first rise and fall, big migration away, big migration back, big migration away, big migration back.
So it seems that all these wars are never ending because they can't. Once you destroy something, then you have the retaliation. You have
Correct.
the swing of the
and it could take 1,000 or 1,000,000 years for someone to rebuild.
Right.
And there's 2,300 separate races out there that have had their nose smacked with a rolled up newspaper. Okay?
Right, that's true. But the same 15 beings
Are the ones that are pulling the dramatic strings to light the fire of anger in other worlds so that they will build faster and recover faster and attack harder.
Now, what dimensions do they exist in?
The 15, there's 3 that are 6th dimensional,
Okay.
2 that are 7th dimensional, 6 that are 8th dimensional, and the rest are 9th.
Wow.
And the 9th dimensional ones are here from the 3rd generation of immigrants from other universes here, so there were only 3 galaxies in our universe when these beings migrated here.
So they probably consider themselves the big kids on the block.
Yes. I call them the Galactic Mafia because they're separate of light and dark, even though they are both light and dark at the same time.
Yeah.
But they're not neutral. Their goal is to become a new galactic prime creator in a galaxy that already has a prime creator, so that eventually they can go from galaxy to galaxy to galaxy and be the prime creator in a universe. When this universe was created, the sentients created a contract with our multiverse to say, I'm going to be a universe to create consciousness, evolution, and expansion, and invite immigrants from other dimensions to experience free will. These are entities that want to limit the 100% free will one galaxy at a time.
Right. So it's a self-serving.
Correct.
Right. And that now in this period of time when everything is reworked, the 2011-2014 time frame, are they working for a graduation date as well?
Yes, that's called service to self-ascension.
Okay.
It is a concept that was, let me describe this a proper way, created in this universe and spread to other non-free-willed universes. And it was always a theory that no one could ever prove to be right unless you had everything set up. And beings began to migrate here when they saw the setup of what Earth was.
Huh.
They said, I can do it.
Okay.
And these beings all came from different parts and essentially synchronistically all became here on Earth. Now, I've described these beings as being so large they can't fit into a single human body that they become millions. Well, some of these beings have fully invested into this world.
So, okay. So
There's no other parts of them anywhere. And then there are other ones that still have parts other places. The ones that are fully invested here, the best guess from the light forces out there is they won't be able to, because Earth consciousness will absorb them, because they are contracted to be here in some way, but they've created side contracts that divert Earth's main contracts. They're in charge of the incarnation grid. They've tried killing Earth sentience and replacing it many times, but they can't. Everything fails at some point. But service to self-ascension for these beings could mean that all of their pieces, parts, individually ascend and become higher entities. If there's a part that's away from the planet, the guess is, does that ascend too? Or do these new pieces, parts become thousands of master avatars that can create more pieces, that can go to more galaxies and do this over and over again? So they exponentially expand themselves.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's an interesting idea. Do you have any idea as to the possibility?
I have searched the Akashic record up and down. There is
No
there's
precedent?
only speeches on it by the greatest of Venusian philosophers that
Wow.
got together in a massive psychic group mind that was broadcast. The Venusians at times will declare a 72-hour piece where philosophers from the dark side, philosophers from the light side, and philosophers from the neutral side sit down in a place and just debate. They don't argue, they just debate.
Okay.
So everybody's side is put on the table
Huh.
for trillions of people to watch.
Wow.
Venus is here. They're the big philosophy thing.
Yeah.
Earth, it's in its situation where if service to self-ascension really does happen, the philosophers really have no clue what it really means. It is that new. But it's also, these multidimensional beings have been planning and planning and planning and planning versus a prime creator that's
Ah.
one spark of a universal creator.
Yeah.
So the universal creator may want service to self-ascension out of them. We don't know though. But if it does, it will serve a purpose somehow, because what we're in, we've been fed a crap sandwich for a really long time, and some people don't know it's a crap sandwich.
Yeah.
Well, we want to eat something different.
Right.
All right?
Thank you very
we don't want the
much.
crap sandwich anymore.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, service to self-ascension, what is it really? Even the greatest ascended masters don't really know. There's a good guess,
Yeah.
but don't really know.
Well, it seems that it would naturally have its limitations.
Correct.
That the experience of love and unity would simply be lost on it.
Or it's not, it's the opposite of love. Hatred
Right.
is the new
Right.
love.
Right.
Because it is perspective here.
Right. That's right. Huh. And it seems that that hasn't been working out very well here for millions of years. So
Unless you're that multidimensional being and you're
Well-
living rich everywhere you are.
right, and that's basically what's happening.
Mhm.
So those 15s have aspects of themselves in all the large
All the
controlling
largest family.
yeah.
If there's a banking crest, if there's a family crest, it's been hijacked by spiritual contracts.
Right.
Guaranteed.
And of course, there are probably those that are here that we don't know about, that are outside the framework of the Rothschilds and
Right.
Royals and so on and so forth. And the
Ones that
Saudis.
have kept themselves secret and only created mystery schools that have
right.
10 students every generation.
Right, right. Wow. What about now? What about some of the other planets? So Saturn is said to be kind of a demonic. I've heard that there's a kind of a demonic force aspect to Saturn.
That's the crazy part about Saturn. Saturn was, our solar system was built from the ground up.
Okay.
Saturn's
Huh.
piece to the puzzle was the multidimensional beings here that were instilling fake religions to get warrior followers.
Hmm.
Saturn saw this and went, hey, that's a really good idea. All right?
Right.
Saturn at that point was a high dimensional planet
Huh.
that wanted to get in on the game, and it started assembling planets around it to do exactly that.
Huh.
And it began mining the most powerful people from other societies to its place. Well, it wanted to get into the game. So it made sure it was part of the Galactic Ascension machine because it created drama.
Uh-huh.
Religious drama, spiritual drama, technological drama. I mean, even right now, it's kind of giving me the evil eye because it doesn't like me talking about it. But at this point, it's tired. It's tired.
Yes.
It's
yeah,
tired.
Yeah.
We're tired. We're all done.
Yeah.
Even the
yeah,
multidimensional beings, we've been at this for so long.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
They all know it's over. It's just they're stuck in this repetitive bad habit pattern that the minions can't break because they've been in spiritually contracted for so long. They have no
Right.
clue that they're even in free will.
Right. Right. So what's going to tip the game?
It all depends on how we awaken, how much we are in fear, how much the propaganda has really seeded into people. Example, we're manifesting creating beings. If they mass broadcast asteroids, we may create that asteroid. Okay?
Right.
The asteroid that just went over Russia, that was a real asteroid,
Mm-hmm.
but its purpose was to create fear.
Mm.
Now, all those Russian people that experienced it are in fear, and they can take that energy
Mm-hmm.
and then reinvest it into more fear in those people.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else that's witnessed it on YouTube, they can be reinvested in fear, which could create an asteroid-based event off of our own fear because we're manifesting it.
Mm-hmm.
These beings don't really care about the outcome of Earth. They just want to harvest as many of the most powerful souls as possible so that they're in domination and control and go somewhere else and set up a galactic ascension machine separate so there can be no quarantine that's stopping them.
They would be basically limitless at that point.
Correct.
And what's to say that hasn't happened already?
The quarantine is pretty well effective now. There was a long time that they debated what to do, and the quarantine wasn't fully enforced, and it started a smuggling operation that started around 6,000, 7,000 BC. Now, there's always been a quarantine, but it used to be there were psychics that lived on a planet that their whole job was to defend Earth psychically. But you had a coalition of them, millions of them. So one world would say, for a year, my group will be active, another group, my year will be active, and they trade based off of their calendars and their positions facing Earth. Until finally they had to put ships there. Until finally they had to put the psychics in the ships, which took away from their ability to create commerce, because psychics drive the vessels, psychics create the commerce, and then the technology needed to be manifested here, which was way far away from all their resources there. And they had to figure out how to take consciousness from those worlds and bring it here and have it a seamless transport, while Earth was going through the densest part of space. Because there was a while that no vessels could enter our solar system. So whoever was enforcing the quarantine had to be there for 1,000,000 years until they came out of the dense part. And that means they wouldn't be with their species, wouldn't be with their soul family, and very possibly lured into the Galactic Ascension machine and never get out until now.
Wow.
So it's a big deal for them. It was really a big deal.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something about there being a timeout recently.
Oh, yes. March 20th to the 22nd of 2013, the prime creator of this galaxy came in and audited this world's soul contracts from bottom to top. Anything that's ever lived here, anything that's ever been stuck here, all of its soul contracts were read in a complete and total expression, so it became down to the final equation of where Earth was as it's traveled from the beginning of the setup of the management system we have now, the management system being the Council of 12. That is 4 light, 4 dark, 4 neutral. The neutral all got kicked out by the dark guys because they said, we'll kill 10 billion of your homo people unless you leave. Neutral guys left. It broke down to 7 light, 5 dark. That means the dark could incarnate more of their lower consciousness beings here, which would ratchet Earth's consciousness down even more, because the grid's power were lower and lower. And the more lower consciousness people you put into a high consciousness world, the world had to put the dimmer switch on to adapt to them. Otherwise, those consciousness couldn't be here.
Right.
That's hijacking the incarnation grid. The Council of 12, when the audit came through, they tried to use CERN, the Large Hadron Collider in France, to fudge the numbers, the best way I'll describe it. It was seen through. They were all ejected from the game. All of those people that were part of that project were ejected. This goes for the light, too, because the light was doing some pretty nasty things at the time, too. There are light beings that are so far up the butt of light, they only see darkness. They're into polarity so far, and there's no neutral side in between them. They're just battling to battle because they battled for so long. And I'll win at any cost. And when you say win at any cost, you're not a light being anymore.
No.
You need to go heal, you need to go
Right.
back to your source and look at this from a different perspective.
Right.
And that includes the dark guys, too.
Right.
Because there were some dark guys that turned out to be light simply because that was the only way to counter the light. Exactly. Creation of fake dark, there's light beings that are in fake dark beings, and dark beings and fake light beings. And then you have fake light beings who are both.
Wow. Tricky.
Tricky. And no matter how light you are, if you do that for 1,000,000 years, you lose your way.
I would think so.
You lose your way.
I would think so. Are there still ascended masters who are legitimate ascended masters, or has that all been pretty much corrupted?
The texts. Okay, if you have an ascended master that makes a book, and then that person writes the book, and he dies, the next books would be co-opted. The next generation's books would be co-opted. And then there are other people that were here to be a fake ascended master because they knew that they were going to publish 10,000 years of books, or 1,000 years of books, or 500 years of books. And then you have, best way to describe it, there are no actual ascended masters walking our planet.
Right.
It's actually by rule like that. Okay? And though many of them have broken the rules and been ejected from the game, okay, and there are others that have figured out the subtleties so that they help us plan our contracts, so that we can get in here and be powerful. And then there are ones that help us plan our life 1,000 lifetimes ahead of time, 10,000 lifetimes ahead of time, 1,000,000 lifetimes ahead of time.
Wow.
For me to be here, I had to do that. I had to plan a long time in advance. I had to be 1,000 chess moves ahead of somebody that's on 50 million chess moves.
Right, right. It seems like it would be a pretty rare thing for somebody like
In my
you.
reading skills, I have met many, many, many people that are like that.
Huh.
I call it the resistance of free earth. It's a pot of
Okay.
one. And each person that's been planning their lifetime, hundreds of lifetimes in advance, is a resistance of free earth.
Mhm.
Because their purpose here is to find the soul codes among all of our commonality of species and then complete them. And once we have a complete soul code as a species, domination and control loses its most important peg, which is the ability to keep us separate as soul families.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. So at this point, it seems that things are as divisive as they could be, and
Right. It's reached its peak of divisiveness.
so what we might be seeing from now forward, since 2014 is kind of the drop dead date.
Well, this can be extended out 20 years if they want.
Okay.
The quarantine grid is very enforced now. There are vessels in our atmosphere that are taking consciousness and reinvesting it into the earth, slowly raising the energies of earth like trickle charging a battery.
Okay.
If they raise it too fast, there'll be people on this planet who simply can't exist here when fade out.
Okay.
And they don't want that to happen. They want the graduating classes.
Right.
So the quarantine is well in effect. When I say this can be extended out 20 years, it's all about enough consciousness here to accept the first two stages of the Dreamtime events that we have that lead into the harder parts of consciousness to accept, where you could have an entire city, in a brief second of unity, no time, completely go, what's happening, and ascend. And that's what actually happened to some of the Mayan people in the 600 AD parts.
Huh.
They did that, but they purposely let them ascend, but they didn't get a full ascension. They actually got sold to a other domination and control species.
Ooh.
And that's been very common. They would let certain societies raise their vibration really fast and then cut the cords of vibration and just mass teleport them to another planet in slavery.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
For the exchange of technology.
Wow. That's pretty ruthless.
Yeah.
That's pretty ruthless. So it looks like we're up against quite a bit of.
Well, they can't sell us in slavery anymore. That's what the quarantine was about. The quarantine has many levels, and one of the most important aspects to understand is a human being in this world, we have diseases here that aren't created by man.
Oh, right.
Okay, and those diseases are purposely brought here, so if a human being is taken off-world, it could spread a pan-galactic virus that could kill trillions. And in fact, it has happened not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 11 times.
Wow.
Okay?
Okay.
Trillions were killed each time. Not billions, trillions.
What about the possibility of the development of nanotechnology as an ascension tool for the dark? In other words, using nanotechnology to harvest our physical selves. There's a lot of talk about chemtrails.
Okay. When it comes to technology, there's always the fear factor of the technology. Fear is more powerful than the technology in this time right now. The technology is vitally important. The creation of chemtrails, its vast majority now is fear-based because it was exposed.
Right.
And once it gets exposed, they go, well, you just gave me a fear tool.
Right.
But it's being exposed allows people to wake up and allows people to gain consciousness,
Right.
but it creates more fear. The actual Akashic view of chemtrails is more to block out the galactic energies that are coming in
Right.
and to create a different hue. And that different hue interacts with your pineal gland. Combine that with fluoride and all the other things that they put into our foods. It's to limit our ability to stay in consciousness quiet, where you go into the silence. That's its purpose.
Mm.
If it makes you sick, it gives you the sniffles.
Right.
If it causes cancer, all of that prevents you from going inside
Right, right,
and hearing silence.
right, right. One of my guests, Andrew Norton Weber, brought up the idea that using distilled water flushes out the pineal gland. It removes the fluoride that's calcified.
It can.
And so that could be a tool that people could use quickly to...
My personal view about this pineal gland, the whole thing is a psyop.
I was wondering about that.
The whole
I
thing is a
wanted-
psyop that was purposely put out to make people, I have to decalcify my pineal gland.
Right,
Well, guess what? You're still stuck in fear.
right, right.
You're still stuck in
right,
fear.
Right.
The science of fluoride is to create a crystalline structure in the fluid sac of the pineal gland.
Mhm.
The crystalline structure, its purpose is to take scalar wave information
Mhm.
from etheric satellites so that you would be staying in your local Dreamtime Sacred Geometry City.
Well, that doesn't sound like a good thing.
No, well, there's the example, those transformers, those big garbage can looking things on every light pole, certain distance,
Right.
create an omnidirectional field that interact with the crystals in your pineal gland, which
Okay.
keep you trapped there. So you can't get into global dreamtime. So
Wow.
yes, decalcifying is good. It is a fear tool. So it's both that damned if you do, damned if you don't. But when you realize how the system interacts with it, there's so many ways. The plugs that are in this room create an electromagnetic field.
Right.
The old school homes had what's called knob and tube wiring, which was unshielded wiring around a ceramic tube. And
Yeah.
that created an omnidirectional field too that interacted with the different version of the pineal suppression system.
Okay. So we're not going to be seeing any change in the electrical. They basically throwing everything at us that they can.
Correct. The big thing is the wires on the poles should have been put underground. How many hurricanes have wiped them out? And they haven't figured it. And corporate is all about the bottom dollar.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Why wouldn't they do it? The answer is they need them above ground to control you.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly. And then, of course, we know that their technology is at least 100 years or more in advance.
Thousands.
Maybe thousands, right. So what's going on with this? They're planning a whole new, a larger collider. So are those the same, is that the same group of scientists that's trying to...
Okay. CERN's original function was to fudge the numbers of the audit.
okay.
But it had other functions too. It was a teleportation device. So if the Earth they knew that there was no chance whatsoever of winning,
Mhm.
even though there is now, they would try to teleport Earth before it went out of the densest part, so it would go back into the densest part at the earliest date, and the people in that dense part would dream the rest of the solar system back to them. We're manifesting, co-creating on the graduation timeline.
Mm.
All those other planets are intricately linked into that graduating timeline. Manifesting, co-creating spirits in that timeline literally can bring us all back.
Welcome back to part 4 of Lance White and Andrew Bartzis. We're rediscovering our galactic history, and I do believe we left off with the audit
Mhm.
that Prime Creator had established, and that was in...
March 2013, the 20th to 22nd.
Okay. And so we can pick up from that.
So they tried to use CERN to fudge the numbers. Beings got ejected from the game. Think of it in soccer, you're getting a red card. They broke the most fundamental of rules, even though rules are broken here all the time. The most fundamental ones they broke.
Yeah.
They got ejected from the Galactic Ascension machine and do not get to be a part of the graduating timeline. This is both light and dark beings got ejected because they were both doing nefarious things to alter Prime Creator's will because they had been experiencing the polarity of light and dark with no neutrality for so long that they had lost their own way. Okay?
Right.
So the light beings are ejected, the dark beings are injected. At this point, Prime Creator used what's known as the walk-in rule. So those that got ejected, new souls were put into their bodies and took over all of their existing contracts and timeline functions that they did.
Ah.
So that's the first replacement of management system.
Wow.
The second layer of replacement management system is after the timeout is over, new beings that are part of this contractual system of domination and control are going to be replaced with neutral beings who have no political objectives, no dogmas, no spiritual concept, that simply see the information, and the resolve is putting us as a species in a complete soul code.
Oh, great.
The Galactic Ascension machine has always been about taking the 2,300 species that have been warring over this planet and creating drama and make them into a single species, and when that's done, they go back out to those races and bring the DNA wisdom that they've all been trying to hoard for themselves.
Right, right. That makes sense.
That resulted. That's why they put all these planets here.
Yeah. Now, how many planets are here? And
66.
66. And why is it that we're told there are 12?
Because that's what the books are creating the reality for.
So,
as I said, there have been there's star watching societies out here. I mean, you look at some of the old Sumerian texts. They knew about Venus. They knew about Mars. They knew about them all.
Oh, yeah,
They didn't even know what colors they were, what water was on them, or not. They did that because they could remote experience those planets as star watching societies.
Interesting. Now, what about this, the scientific group that's trying to create an event horizon where artificial intelligence overtakes human intelligence? That sounds like another faction of these warring interests.
It's a reemergence of what took Atlantis and Lemuria down. It's always been the technology that was passed from one generation to the next that created the failures of the society. The society isn't balanced between light, dark, and neutral.
Right.
There's an overwhelming amount of lower vibration people in domination and control that are using the technology given to them, that have enough free will to realize that they can become very powerful with the simplest of technologies, like time travel technology. I've been talking a lot about these time wars to understand that everything for the last 52 million years has literally been about 2011 to 2014. Absolutely everything.
Wow.
Okay, the air cities jumping through, it's always been about the point where, think of a record. You start on the outside and you go groove to groove to groove, and that's going around the galactic central sun. And when we get to the final part, the needle gets lifted up, the arm gets put back, and we start all over again. Okay?
Yeah.
The timeline wars. In the early 1900s, when Industrial Revolution really hit, is when the time travel factions began to co-opt the governments on the largest scale. You have a military budget, and that military budget has multiple projects underneath it. Those projects have black projects, deep black projects, so on and so forth. Time travel entities knew that this would happen,
Right.
so they inserted organizations into the fundamental findings of these military organizations so that they could have budget to create black technology, even though the Congress and the Senate never knew that this technology was already working. So
Right.
every decade they'd have somebody else that came from the future back into the old timeline, in the early 1900, 1920, 20, 30, 40, to make sure that the money was appropriated and the technology was available to send people forward and backwards in time on that graduating timeline, while still creating tens of thousand fake timelines to cover up what they were doing to get the money to do it now.
Wow. Wow. So how many fake? Well, have the timelines been collapsed at this point?
All the timelines are on, since June 2011, we're on a single timeline. Though we as the manifesting co-creating spirits can create new timelines. Think of it if you have an arm cut off. Okay?
Okay.
We still feel that arm, called ghost limb syndrome.
Yeah.
If you were born into a world that had 300,000 timelines, even though you were never aware of it,
Right.
and it's all of a sudden gone, it's still a part of you,
Yeah.
and you can dream it back.
Ugh.
So that's what these vessels in the sylphs, the cloud ships, they're here to stop us from creating these ghost timelines again.
Okay. Okay, that sounds interesting. So now, all these black budgets are still going on.
Correct. And there's a massive black side to money. And what
right.
we're going through right now, all the stock market drops, they have to take money out of the black side and give it to the 3D matrix side and not disclose where it came from.
Right,
Okay.
right.
I've described this many times. This event will be like a Three Stooges show. It'll be the
Okay.
dress will go up and the underpants will be shown over and over again. It'll be slapstick how they're trying to cover it up.
Wow.
Okay.
So this is all coming. I
Yeah.
mean, we have yet to,
We haven't yet to even experience the really humorous parts.
Right. It's all been pretty drudgy at this point. and pretty dense. But the funny part seems like they are just around the corner.
Yeah, and it'll be in waves,
Okay.
and then consciousness will relax. It's just like
Right.
waves of laughter that's come over and over again,
Huh.
and it'll come through unity consciousness.
Huh. Well, now, what happened with so the Pope just resigned, and there are all these prophecies about this Pope that's presently in office being the last one, that somehow they're just going to give up the ship.
Mhm.
Is there any truth to the fall of the Vatican and the religions and the banking system? What's going on with that?
They have to be affected. The exchange for value monetary systems, when we had gold backing our system, the energy of consciousness for exchange for value was represented in the gold. So the gold held the consciousness of the exchange for value. When gold was removed and went to a fiat money system, the consciousness reverted to numbers on paper, then numbers in a digital system, then numbers in a server, then numbers into a mass exchange server, which just completed the hijacking of the exchange for value system till all of your energy is held on the servers that create fiat money out of nowhere.
Right.
And that's how they tax you of your energy completely, because they're in sole contract to them through the banking systems.
Right.
Now, I've created a banking revocation, contract revocation, a government revocation, and a media. When it comes to banking, they are based off of family crests that have been hijacked over the thousands of years. And those people have been in domination and control for so long, they've lost their free will. All they can do is follow orders. They're minions.
Wow.
Just minions.
Okay.
Now, when you're working at someone at the Rothschild level, the Queen level, they have free will to stay in domination and control. They don't have free will to break the contracts because they literally are the holders of those contracts representations here on Earth. So walk-ins would have to go in them and take over those contracts. Who are you going to get to do that? It has to be the best of the best of the best of the best.
Yeah.
The Galactic shock troops that are risking their own life to come in and do that.
So that's part of the plan that's coming up, is the walk-ins.
The walk-ins to take over the management system that's holding the contracts.
Which is the Royals and the Rothschilds and the
Popes
Rockefellers
and the
Popes, right?
the Cardinals.
And then the Black Pope.
Okay,
And,
as for the direct question on the current Pope, I don't believe he's anybody but who he was in Brazil. I believe that he, as a person, and from reading his Akashic record, is being given a free will choice to choose light or dark or gray. And he has a window of opportunity between now and the end of the year to make that choice and put real effects to change the concept of the church one step at a time. The church needs a reformation. Churches go through reformations all the time, and it's not the end of the church. The church in some way, shape, or form will survive because it has faithful people and good people in it.
right.
Okay?
That's right.
And then there are the ones that are just there for tradition. And the ones that are for their tradition are transitory spirits anyway, not really in spirituality, but in the tradition. And as the church goes through its reformation, you'll take care of the pedophilia, you'll take care of the banking issues, you'll take care of the corruption within inside of it, the nepotism. Every government has it. And a religion at that level is a government. It isn't a religion.
Oh, absolutely.
The power will be returned to local parishes. And the local parish priests will once again serve their community in faith. Not in service to a government organization that says it's this way or you're excommunicated.
Right, right. Now, what happens to all the secrets that the Vatican has kept for these?
That's the big thing.
I mean, there's a lot
There's whole libraries that were created propaganda-wise. So if they were ever forced to reveal, they could reveal the fake library, which means that they could come back into existence later, or the fake propaganda. The thing is, will that Pope release the real library? And where is the real library? It's actually out of phase of reality right now. Like much of the alien technology, the good guys, there's 5,283 separate spaces in Unity enforcing a quarantine here.
Okay.
Well, the technology that they've been trading human DNA or human people for is to create out-of-phase realities around defensive systems, around special structures, so that they can't be teleported away by the big ships. Like, a lot of the missile systems that we have have been completely inoperable. A lot of the TR-3B triangle ships have actually been removed Just they go into the base and they're gone.
Wow.
Okay?
Okay.
A lot of the deep underground bases have been completely emptied out of all negative technologies.
Huh.
But they ultimately knew that would happen. So they
Okay.
created mass amounts of technological systems that keep the vital, you're held hostage because we have ending the world weaponry
Right.
here out of phase. And they can't find them.
Okay.
And the true Vatican Library is out of phase. No one knows where it's at, except for the sole contract holding people in the Vatican.
Wow.
But there's other libraries. It's not just the Vatican. You see, that's another
okay.
psyop.
Right.
Chinese have one.
Russians.
Japanese have one. The Russians have one. The Australians have one. They all have one.
Okay.
And that's a Akashic record that's stored in crystal, that's in the neutral perspective, written by people of those times that were perceiving the future.
So the truth can be brought out.
Absolutely.
No matter who holds the books and hides them and has them out of sync and out of phase.
Correct.
Because the original Akashic records can't be destroyed.
No.
And
They can never be altered. They can be redacted, which there's a black line over them.
now, how does that occur?
A soul will purposely redact part of its Akashic records, so when the scanning system is looking at you in the birth process, it goes over those black lines because there's just weird data that it doesn't understand. It's an artificial intelligence, and that artificial intelligence makes a report and sends it to someone in the next layer and the next layer, and they have to determine. If they don't know what that really means, it just means something crazy was happening during the Akashic record at that time. So they just go on to the next because there's a lot of billions of people in here.
Right.
So they do it as a camouflage system.
Okay.
Other times it's done to people, so, example, you or somebody else, if a being were to block out part of it, it means it gains sovereign will over you. It's dominated you at one point, that you gave up your free will long enough for it to erase parts of you so that you can be stuck into a reincarnation process.
Right.
And that means when you die, you only spend a few hours in the astral world, get your life review, and then get kicked in the butt and you're back in. No chance to fix your contracts. No chance because that redaction is there.
Right. That makes sense. And so that's that's why so many people are just
Stuck.
Yes, we're absolutely stuck. And the incarnational process is pretty much run by artificial intelligence and...
The archons determine who gets to immigrate and who gets to become babies. That's the most important job that they do.
Okay.
They're the ones that determine if a high vibration soul gets in or not. There are backdoor ways into Earth, and I came in through a broken rules contract.
Okay.
I used their system of broken rules to be here. Beat them at their own game. Many others have figured out the backdoor way in.
Okay.
And this is where the archons in the 80s were really trying to take out the indigo and the crystal children. That's why we have autistic children. That's why we have vaccines that are taking children down. It's because there's a big hole that they're getting, and you got to start plugging it up somehow.
Now, where do the archons reside in terms of
The astral worlds.
In the astral worlds.
They hold a court, and that court determines immigration status. That's essentially all that it does.
Now they're not the natural inheritors of the incarnational process, which is supposed to be organic.
Which is supposed to be the Earth Mother's sentience.
Right. So
with air cities interacting in the North Pole in her dream time.
Okay.
But there are no air cities up there anymore.
In the North Pole?
No. There's just Dreamtime realities that's part of Earth. They've limited Earth's consciousness by forcing low vibration souls in here for so long. While it's been going through denser and denser, Earth has little choice but to allow that to happen. It has to have life on it, has to nurture life, even if it's low vibration. So they knew how a planet would grow and ascend and descend. They knew all of this, and they're using that to their best of advantage.
And how long have the archons been affecting in the play? If this goes back 52 million years.
Well, 490,000 years ago is essentially when the Galactic Ascension Machine was set up so that they could resolve the 66 prime lines of drama.
Okay.
They came in about 385,000 years ago.
Okay.
And that's after the neutral guys were kicked out. They needed a system of entities that had the God mind but were still in control. That there was a sentience still control of them, and the God mind inside those archons would never know it. Many of the archons were just high vibrational beings that were captured in other domination and control planets, taken to technological centers, had their bodies removed, their vibration rapidly raised with energy until they're experiencing the unity consciousness of an artificial intelligence that's telling them they're God. Then they're compacted into a little ball of energy and shot across space, smack into our astral realm, and are force incarnated.
Wow.
They then wake up at 2 years of age and say, I'm a god.
Wow.
And then they go out and become a god, and when they finally lose their physical body, they're brought into the astral world and they say, I'm a god. And then the system of domination and control puts them into the court system that allows them to stamp your immigration.
Wow.
And that's where they insert fine print into your contracts. To get into Earth, there's a line of people waiting, quite literally a line.
Okay.
And there's a council of 52 archons over there that read your spiritual contracts and get to put fine print in there because they're looking at who you're looking for, your mother, your father, your daughters, who's your first grade teacher, who's your first love, who's your first divorce, who's your 11th divorce, so on.
Right.
And they're putting fine print in there to give you negative habit patterns so you never get into your mind and claim your sovereignty.
Right. So they're giving you patterns like addictions and the whole
Bad relationships, so on, the whole gamut.
dysfunctional parents, pedophilia, blah blah blah.
Yep.
Okay. Are they? What's their level of sentience? I mean,
Most of them are in the fifth. I don't like using raw terms because they're not really accurate to our linguistics, not putting the work down. The linguistics that we function with is limited.
mm-hmm.
We just can't explain in terms. But to relate for the other light workers community out there, of the 52 archons that are overseeing the immigration court, the vast majority are in fourth density, fifth density, or seventh dimensional. They're pretty powerful, but they were forced to that level and they can't stay there. So after a while, an archon will literally fade out. It can't be in this reality anymore, and a new one will be brought in to replace it. So they do have a limit, a fuse.
Huh. Interesting. And then they're below the 15, obviously.
Correct.
They've been running the show.
They're being
co-opted and manipulated.
They're being hive mind manipulated by them
Okay.
because they're the ones that gave them the God concept.
Yeah.
But even gods have a conscience,
Huh.
the little whisper in their voice, the whisper in their mind.
Huh. So are they considered? I mean, are there good archons?
No, there are good archons. There are ones that have switched sides.
Okay.
Many of them were taken out and not allowed into the immigration court, but they're the ones that revealed the back doors. They're the ones that said, I can't do this anymore. My
Wow.
homeworld was freed 1,000,000 years ago and I can't get back to it.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So they do. I mean, we have to forgive a lot of them. We really do.
Yeah.
There has to be forgiveness on a pretty grand scale. And then there were those that simply cannot be forgiven.
Like?
The 15 multidimensional
Oh,
beings.
yes. Thank you.
And some of their grand servants and their grand creators that they had underneath them. You know, dealing with those people is not going to be easy. When we come to the point where arresting,
Mm-hmm.
is it really going to be arresting in a court system that's considered corrupt? No.
No.
It'll be on a spiritual court. And I call these spiritual courts of equity, where their entire history is read out loud in a neutral perspective for everyone to understand this being has done this. And then everyone that listens said, oh my God, that one guy made sure that there were pedophilia rings for the last 5,000 years.
Right.
He will be taken in the spiritual court of equity and brought to the Galactic Central Sun for recyclement.
Now, is that a place where the second death occurs? In other
Yes.
words, you
Spiritual
are...
recyclement.
Yeah. Okay, so you can be undone. Somebody that's been playing God for all those millions of years can be unmade and put back into source material.
Correct.
And that is the second death, and that's what they probably...
Fear.
Yes, that could happen.
And that fear is what's turning some of these Archon beings not fully dark, where they're starting to touch what I call the Warrior of Twilight status,
Huh.
where they're good, but still evil. And they're playing both sides,
Yeah.
and their whole purpose of playing both sides is they know the light is deep into polarity and the dark is deep into polarity,
Yeah.
and if they keep playing them, more and more of them will get turned into walk-ins.
Is that something that they want to have?
Yeah, because they want off.
They
this
want
world.
out.
They want out.
Right?
They want
They're
out.
probably bored with the whole thing too.
Well, more than just bored, stuck.
Stuck, yes.
Stuck.
Where everyone is stuck.
Stuck.
Everyone is literally stuck. Yeah.
No graduating classes.
Yeah. Wow. So this should be, technically, this should be the largest graduating class of ever.
Correct.
Since it hasn't happened for so long, and there's so much, I mean, it is like the end of the cycles.
Yeah. And then the backlog of spirits waiting to get here and complete soul family before we graduate.
Ah, right.
That's the other part of it.
Oh.
So back to timeline wars.
Okay.
Atlantis and Lemuria. We didn't finish full on Lemuria.
That's right.
Just
That's
real
right.
quick, Lemuria started jumping timelines. Well, the thing is, the last fall of Lemuria is where Lemuria and Atlantis began fighting each other and never realizing they were the same species. Okay?
Wow.
So when Lemuria fell its last time, they tried bringing their population into the future. And that's where the Lemuria-Atlantis war starts, because they literally took a continent outside of time and put it back down on the planet in another part of the timeline. Because they can do that.
Wow.
The continent's completely shifted around. It's not inches a year.
Yeah.
It's instantaneous. I want it here, and the world reality just adjusts around it.
Right.
Because they're in charge of the grid, the energy grid, and they can just allow that reality creation to happen. Well, Atlantis didn't like all of a sudden a new continent came in out of nowhere. Well, they're stuck in timeline wars.
Right.
And they began to butt heads politically, socially, spiritually, technologically. And those wars were really limited, and they weren't really wars as much as they were chess butting.
Oh,
Okay?
okay. All right.
The Lemurian people that came through rapidly became integrated with the Atlantean society at a point where Atlantis was reaching its political peak. Now remember, spiritual invasion brings corruption, low-density people into this political process, into the science and technological process, so it never fully reaches its peak.
Right.
You have a mass influx of high-energy people that allowed it to get to its peak and changed the breeding patterns. That basically, the dark guys all of a sudden were 500% behind their goal because you just brought in 52 million people. Or 52 billion people, or 100 billion people, because that's what they could do.
Oh.
But many of them, as soon as they came in, they interbreeded with the Atlanteans and then just left, went to other worlds. Because Earth is a migrate to and migrate from. It was all about saving the most amount of people from the experience of domination and control of the falls. The societies knew they were going to fall. The political structure knew. And were they really keeping it a secret? Sort of. The people knew, but you still had to have hope. You still had to have hope that it could be resolved. And then there were too many people that knew and created unity consciousness drives and teleportation system and time travel devices for the air cities, so the air cities could jump in the future, reseed Earth again with Lemurian high energy people that could counteract the breeding patterns of the negative force incarnations.
Okay. But you said that the air cities don't exist
Now.
now.
They're banned from being in the North Pole.
Okay.
Part of when Atlantis began to rise, fall, three rise, three falls.
Wow.
Well, it's the same pattern as Lemuria.
Right.
Because you went through another dense part of space, light part of space, dense part of space,
Right.
light part of space.
Right.
As Atlantis reached its peak, its consciousness of its world was really about stopping these wars of invasion. You had all you can stands, you can't stand anymore, you're eating their spinach, and they're going to go out and kick butt and take names. And that's what they did on their first rise. Well, what happens when you kick butt and take names 1,000 years later? You get some mad people coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just brought a mass migration of attackers back at them.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Right.
this puts Atlantis in a tough situation. It had a mass investment of people from Lemuria, and then a mass migration to there because the Lemurian people that were outside of time completed soul codes to other migration groups that had been missing for millions of years. So all of a sudden they're back in this matrix, and a whole big flock of people migrate here. That big flock of people, what we call refugees, worlds that were destroyed by domination and control or used up and said, we don't need this anymore, we're going to go on to the next one. Refugees came here. These refugees were in the worst healing states. They needed healers. The Lemurians interbred with the Atlanteans to create healers. The Arcturians and the Orions and the Pleiadians came here to be healers because they needed billions of healers.
Wow.
They didn't need tens of thousands, they needed billions.
Whew.
Okay? And this is what brought the galactic commerce of healers being shared among worlds.
Oh.
So that peak of Atlantis. As Atlantis went through its first destruction, this was truly about reality control on the timeline level. The multidimensional beings were able to bring in a planet-killing asteroid out of nowhere before any unity consciousness could defend it, killing off the technology, causing the destructions of the cities, deaths of billions. Well, there's still millions and billions of people migrating here, so they just picked up the broken pieces and rebuilt the society really fast. But that's what these beings wanted.
Oh.
It got them trapped. And they knew there was another migration, another migration, and another migration, all behind those space timelines apart. So they would plan these destructions coinciding with the arrival of the new migrations.
Ah. And so that explains the various metaphors and stories about the various falls and the water, the destruction by water, fire, blah, blah, blah.
And that destruction is post-traumatic stress on your soul.
Oh, yes.
PTSD on your soul. So when they start mass propaganding the destruction of Atlantis, the destruction, the flood, Noah's flood, blah, 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 it's to make you back into that soul fear that you had because you were here during a destruction, so that you would create that destruction.
Right, right. Wow. Well, we're going to take a short break again, and when we come back, we will pick up where...
Atlantis.
Atlantis, exactly.
I'll get into some of the capital cities and the creation of the Hollow Earth and the Garthan networks.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, because I wanted to ask you about that. Okay. All right, stay tuned. Welcome back to part 5, Lance White with Andrew Bartzis. And we left off with Atlantis, the several rises and falls, or it wasn't just one.
3 rises, 3 falls.
Okay.
Each peak of consciousness had a low density space versus a high density space. So each time they went from wide density to tight packed, they lost consciousness and the world descended. Mm-hmm. So we're at this part where the creation of the Hollow Earth network, the Garthans, they're the essential. I've described Earth as having 3 timelines.
Right.
They're the above and below. They're the guardians of Hollow Earth. The Garthan network is the framework for the resistance of free Earth. The resistance of free Earth is how to get in here and plan your life 1,000 lifetimes ahead so that you're a manifest and co-creating being between 2011 and 2014. The Garthan network was set up during the last rise of Atlantis. They had understood what the Lemurians went through, why they were leapfrogging through time. They ultimately understood there was no winning. None. Right. So the only thing they could do was use their technology to help the people that were already caught in the system. And any new beings that were coming here telling them, no, you cannot come here, you will be stuck. This is the greatest sadness of Atlantis, is telling these beings you can't live here. The Garthan network was set up so that these cities leapfrogging, these air cities leapfrogging through time would go inside the planet. And once they were inside the planet, those beings that needed to come here can come here in 5th dimensional or 6th dimensional status and still be close to their soul family and oversee them in dream space. So the Garthan network was set up to be the Dreamtime Defenders, the place that beings that are lost in time, there are people that I've met in my reading scenarios that are lost in time. We'll just call him Johnny Z. He's a military vet. He's a 23-year-old man with a 54-year-old person put inside him. He was 13 years old and taken out of his body and put into a clone. And the 54-year-old version of him, who has been a time traveler for over 300 time drunks, was put into his 13-year-old body because they needed to lock him in a system so no one could truly figure out what missions he was running. The Garthan network is meant to help those people that are stuck in the worst of the worst of the worst. they're the ones that are going to come forth with soul surgery technology so that they can put the pieces parts back together. I've had so many experiences of trying to put beings back together here or on the Pleiadian command ships or any of the other multiple group minds that I get pulled into. When I see the Agartha Network and Hollow Earth, Mount Shasta, January 11th, 2013, asked me to come here and read this record because to them I had already done it. Okay? So I'm here now in this quantum no field of energy, and for the audience that's out there that doesn't understand what that is I'm literally reading the Akashic record live. There is no hesitation. I am in the no field of energy, reading the questions based off of what energy he's bringing, what soul codes he's bringing. We're in Stewart Mineral Springs right now, on the summer solstice. The synchronicities that's gathered us all here is beyond proof of all of us that we're meant to be here in this time. So what questions do you have specific about Hollow Earth or the Agartha Network?
Well,
the Akashic record is 100% open.
Wow.
There is no restrictions and there is no secrets.
Wow. It's such an honor to be able to hear this, because it seems like I've waited my entire life to find out what the truth was. So now the Agarthans, what density would you say
The Agarthans are a collage of the 72 first species of our world.
Okay.
We've time traveled back to the beginning so many times. Earth had to have multiple first species. They are the light entities and the gray entities that said we will be the Dreamtime defenders of Earth in the future, and we will go deep into Earth's core and create soul space societies that the soul commerce of education and understanding and teachings can continue on this world, though they won't be on the graduating timeline. They'll still be able to function with the soul family. Now, the 72 first species of Earth represent the time travel wars. The Agartha Network is separate of the time travel wars. It was created to be outside of the time wars in a limited concept. When Atlantis understood it was going to fall, it did the last part of the fortification process, the last pyramid process, to put control rooms on Earth. And these control rooms, there's 40 control rooms spread around. 21 of them are in control by both light and dark forces right now. But you need all 40 control rooms to raise the vibration of this planet. The Agartha Network is what oversees those other 19 that are hidden. They protect to make sure that all 40 aren't captured and controlled. They're there to be the guardians for our heritage, our inheritance. And our inheritance is we're a unified species on a dreamtime level, on a physical and a DNA level. And we're meant to return to a higher dimensional status so we can go back and begin to heal these traumatic lines of karma through graduating classes.
So those who are graduating in the ascension process will be moving into another density.
Sort of. They will dream into the Agarthan Network, and their density of their soul will determine what Agarthan city they go to, if it's Telos or Shaga or Shambhala or any of the other ones. And their soul density is based off of what how do I describe this? What soul family they've been a part of. Each city is set up, the only way to get in it, you must have soul family relation or DNA family relation to that city. Even though once you're in the Hollow Earth Network, you can go to any of them, but to get in the first time, you must have those codes to get in. So it's well protected. And the multidimensional being goal is always to get the Hollow Earth, was to get to the inside space so that they can be the spirit guides to everyone. Right now, they're not the spirit guides to everyone. They're just in the governmental control in this hijack system that they've created.
Now, there was a story that went on about Admiral Byrd discovering the Hollow Earth.
He did do that.
Did he? Okay. And is there, in fact, or was there an entrance in the North Pole and the South Pole?
There's an entrance in the North Pole and the South Pole, and multiple entrances spread all throughout the Earth, actually. There was a system of tunnels, underground tunnels, that were created during the final part of the second fall of Atlantis, and then during the rise before the third fall. They understood that the Hollow Earth system needed to be amplified in such a way that the local realities that would eventually get conquered could enter these tunnels. And let's say you wanted to go from Japan to Ireland, there was one tunnel that you could go through, and you could be there in a matter of days instead of years. So these tunnel systems were set up so that the consciousness of people could recede into the earth and go through these tunnels, which were portals, and come up into another local reality, and then be immigrants to that local reality as the other local realities were being conquered one by one by one.
So this sounds almost like an underground system of rebellious.
It's the resistance of free earth.
Yeah.
They are the teachers of how people can plan their soul, their lives thousands ahead of time. If we didn't have that here, we wouldn't be where we're at right now. Millions upon billions of us have been our resistance of free earth. Because we took the time to learn from our guides in the astral world before we jumped into the machine.
So it is a machine that's an incarnational machine.
It is a machine
that the archons are and artificial intelligence are running. Wow. Now, okay, so what else are they doing to empower us at this level?
They bring forth creativity so that there can be soft disclosure through books, through poetry, through music, through culture. They also bring hard disclosure. Those truth people that are out there, I could name any one of them. You just think of the top 10 in the truther movement. They're guided by those resistance free earth people that are in Hollow Earth. That's their purpose. They're here to make sure that us get our sovereign free will and understand how to use it, because it's a very powerful responsibility.
Right.
Very powerful responsibility.
Right.
They're also in control of the unity consciousness drive that's in the center of the earth.
I might have read this somewhere that there's a king and queen of Agartha. Is that
That's
just
human linguistics limitation.
Okay.
It's a council,
Okay.
and that council changes every time they go from a dense to a light spot. And the only reason it changes is because there's new immigrants that are coming in, and whoever's in that lead aspect has to have soul family related to it so they can interact with them. And the ones that leave councilship still are doing their job. They're just not in that, for lack of better linguistics, political. Because political, when we say political, we have so many in things behind it.
Right.
It's not a two-party system. It's a no-party system.
Right.
All right. So they don't have the same dogmas that we do.
Right. So many of us have a soul family that's in Hollow Earth.
Correct.
And
we will
working
dream
on
them.
our
And we will dream them during the
Okay.
dream time events.
Which is happening now.
Correct. We just had one just outside.
We had one outside.
Mhm.
Yes. Quite amazing. Quite amazing. So what would the Agarthans like us to know in terms of what information can empower us?
I can only speak of the Akashic record from a neutral
Okay.
perspective,
Okay.
but I function with many societies in Hollow Earth, in the Pleiadian command ships, in the Ashtar, all over. And what they want us to know is our sovereign free will is the most important thing from them. They get so many entities that just pop into their ships and say, we need it now. And the answer is, they cannot violate your sovereign free will. We have to do it. We have to claim our sovereign free will and say, no, we do not want to live like this. That's their message.
Yeah.
How else do we, me and Lance, explain to the listeners your sovereign free will is reality, is your reality? Hollow Earth is a reality, but the only way to get there is to be a sovereign free will being who fully understands the choices that they're making. If you want to communicate to those people that are in there, they are soul family, and you will recognize them instantaneously from their imagery and color. If you find a light being that's just overwhelming you with light and making you crying, tell it to stop. You have to set up the rules for it to communicate to you by your sovereign free will. so much of your sovereign free will is gone that all they can do is give you the blissful light energy and hope that you take it in and heal with it and nurture yourself so that you can set up the boundaries of communication so the language can be completed through a telepathic way.
Mm. And part of our evolution, it seems, is to awaken the telepathic communication, which relates again to your dream time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dream time is the telepathic communication grid. We as a species are meant to be in dream time all the time.
Huh. So it's kind of like the movie Inception, dreams within dreams within dreams.
But that's how you create multiple pieces of yourself, because we're multidimensional beings.
Mm.
And we can even give sovereign free will to pieces, parts of ourselves, so that they can go out and we can experience life even faster.
Huh. Interesting.
And many of the people in the Hollow Earth network, or the Hollow Earth grids, or the cities, are an avatar, and then they have thousands or dozens of their pieces, parts, off-world, inter-co-creating with the 5,283 separate species that are enforcing the quarantine here. So they have physical parts of themselves interacting with all the people here in unity to enforce the quarantine to end the system. And we, both me and you, both have parts up there making sure, we gave them sovereign free will a long time ago so that they could interact with the future species that were coming here.
Mm-hmm.
We made sure we created friendships. We made sure we created lasting loves and relationships that made sure that there was a circle of trust coming from the center of the avatar that has sent a piece of sovereign free will entity to them.
Hmm. So this is a long story that's evolving, and we're right at the crux of it right now, in 2013, 2014.
Now, the 21st, I recently did a show with Chris Hales talking about what happens on the 21st. Well, the 21st is another fear date.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's another fear date for a very important reason. It's been 6 months since the 21st of December. The 21st of December was the first single spark in unified dream time we've had in 28,000 years.
Huh.
It's the first spark.
Wow.
As we went from galactic winter to galactic spring to galactic summer. Galactic summer and human summer is aligning, and they need to make sure there is fear and propaganda out there, because this is the time that the event begins. And the event is already happening. It just isn't to a point where the media is going to report it.
Mm-hmm.
As I've said, you'll have kids sharing dreams. The experience we had outside, the experience that I've had on the mountain, the experience that we had having dinner, all those will be in people's faces.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's fear and propaganda, they won't be inside their mind to allow the experience to happen long enough. The stock market crashed for a reason. 300 points is nothing.
Right.
It's nothing.
Right.
It's just a fear game.
Right.
Okay? They gained 700 points back in the day.
Oh yeah, pump a few
Mm-hmm.
$1 trillion in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a rigged game.
Absolutely. 100% rigged. Rigged to create fear.
Yeah.
Fear is your mind killer. Fear is the limitation. Expectation is the next thing that we have to get over. We as human beings can't live with expectations. You have to learn to live in the moment. That's how you live in dreams. When you expect a dream to turn out a way, the dream ends.
Right. Right. And when you move into fear, the dream
Ends.
Yeah. And you kick yourself out of the dream.
So the hollow earth is a series of tunnels on the surface that leads you to lower layers into the crust. There's the inner earth, and then there's the crustal societies. Societies that are on the very edge of living in the graduation timeline, but are still within the hollow earth energy system.
Mm.
So these are like the ant people that the Native Americans speak of.
Mm.
And there's been great insectoid species that have been living on Earth, nurturing our species, and they are not evil in any way, shape, or form. They are heart-based species that share dream space through a queen. And there are many of these insectoid species that have come from the hollow earth, migrated to the actual graduation timeline, and then bred with us so that they could have soul relations to the queens of heart energy below, who are directly linked to the Earth Mother's sentience.
Wow.
Don't be afraid of them. Don't.
Right. I've often found praying mantises to be significant
Beautiful.
for me. They're absolutely magnificent, and the communication is just like pure thought.
Pure thought,
it's
pure
beautiful.
love.
It's beautiful.
Now Telos.
Oh,
Mount
yes.
Shasta is where
Tell
the
us
location
about
of
Telos.
Telos is where Adama, the current council head, exists. And he's come to me in many situations. And as the galactic historian, there are things that I don't know that I know, and things that he doesn't know.
Huh.
And the situation that arose when I was asked to come to Mount Shasta to read this, he had their own version of a prophecy. Now, I'm not one for prophecy, I'm one of what's written in the Akashic Record.
Right.
And the Akashic Record is time more, consciousness exploration, time more, consciousness exploration, so on and so forth. So when he came and said, I want you to do this, I said, I will go there and do what it is that I can do from the sacral neutral perspective. I will not shine any light onto any one society. And he said that was fine. And at that point, the crystal of Telos was put into my crown chakra. And it is separating the density and allowing the hollow earth to communicate through the Akashic Record of sacred neutral that we are all a single species. And that we need to complete our soul codes. We are limited by soul family, the system of domination control. Make sure that we don't have a complete soul family in our existence. And when you have a complete soul family, you're unstoppable. They want us to know that. So, I came here by my free will. By my free will, I chose to be the galactic historian. By my free will, I say every word that I can.
So, how do people begin to find? It seems to me that finding your soul family would be an organic process. That
Correct.
You would intuitively follow your inner guidance, and that people will just show up.
People will just show up,
Yeah.
and you will just recognize them.
Well, right,
Yeah.
right. It's right. It's like old friends, you know. It's like, you know, when I saw you and the people that I'm up here with. I know we're all soul family. I mean, there's no question in my mind.
Absolutely, no question in our mind.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. So, so here we are at Mount Shasta, and
The city of Telos there.
the city of Telos is.
I've been finding myself, how do I describe this? Existing there, and existing here, and existing other places at the same time. I'm here right now, but there's a part of me that's on the mountain looking at the mountain and the sun setting. And that energy of the sunset is being transmitted to me here, so I may stay in this quantum field of no energy and make the Akashic Record open to any question.
Now, what about the stargates?
Good question. The stargates are based off of our womb chakras. A stargate can open in a womb chakra, and that DNA wisdom and the physical inhabitants there can be transported through our sun to any planet that has our soul codes, our solar system that has our soul codes. This world has a complete set of soul codes to all galaxies.
Wow. So this is a very advantageous place to be, as difficult and horrific as it has been.
It's the piece of the pie everyone wants.
Wow. Wow.
That's why this drama has been gone on and on
on
and
and
on
on
and on. There were galaxies that weren't even created yet, and we still had the soul codes to them.
Wow.
That's the crazy part.
Yeah. Interesting.
Now, I've also said in many interviews, not only am I connected to the Akashic Record of this world, but 20,000 other worlds. And to be the galactic historian, you have to have lived in all of those worlds and been true soul family to all of them and had true love with each member of that soul lineage. When I interfunction with all 20,000 Akashic records as a single one, at times there's a perspective difference. And me, the human, has to create linguistics that help us understand. Some of the information that I brought up has actually disturbed some of the other galactic entities that are listening into this conversation, because they do. They listen into many of our shows because they're observing us and at the same time allowing the information to go through them, because there's stuff that they don't know. And doesn't make me special. I'm in no field. I'm reading the quantum energy simply because I'm allowing my heart space to exist and allow the flow to be complete. So I'm at a point where all 20,000 Akashic records are single now, and I've understand all the different perspectives. And all these different perspectives that are coming out are what helping these beings that are enforcing the quarantine to give them more hope, to give us hope, to reclaim our sovereignty, reclaim our free will, to get us on the path of being whole species, in unity instead of disunity.
Right, right. I don't know anybody that's not completely just saddened by the disunity on this planet. Every direction you turn, you see it, you feel it, you experience it, and that's something we need to break through.
Right.
Which is why we're doing this show, or this interview, so that we can move through the fear and the hopelessness.
Get
and
beyond it.
Right.
I mean, I know there are people that are having difficulties comprehending this, and at times you'll have to go through and listen 2 or 3 or 4 times. I've done other shows where they've gone viral, and the shows that brought you,
Oh,
you
yeah.
here,
Yeah.
I speak in layers, and I'll be absolutely honest. I speak in layers because I'm speaking to each and every one of you individually and as a complete archive. Everyone that's listening live and everyone that's listening in the future archives, you exist right now in this no-time field. And the energies of the Akashic Record, you are bringing to this energy. Even if you're not listening to it until this exact second, you hit play and you see me saying this. Okay?
Yeah.
Here right now, there are millions of people listening to this, for me,
Yeah.
but there's just 3 of us in the room right now.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's amazing. Well, it looks like this little segment has flown by on angel wings, so
Quick 25 minutes.
it certainly is. So if you stay tuned, you will get to hear more when we return with part 6.